Every leader has a moment, that quiet pause between I think I can, I'm not so sure. Welcome to Tutum Talk with me, Cara Nance. Together, we'll explore what it means to lead with heart, to build confidence not from control, but from connection. Because your leadership isn't about perfection, it's about presence. And when you trust yourself, your team will too. Join me as we explore leadership in the everyday and beyond. Have you ever been called a natural leader? Maybe someone said it after you organized something that was falling apart, or when you stayed calm in a meeting that felt tense and uncertain. It's meant as a compliment, but sometimes, if we're honest, it lands like pressure. Because if you're quote unquote natural, that means you shouldn't struggle, right? You shouldn't question yourself or need help or admit when you're tired. And if you do, then maybe you're not a quote unquote real leader after all. That's the myth we're unpacking today. The idea that leadership should come easily or not at all. The truth is, leadership isn't about being natural, it's about being authentic. It's about choosing presence over performance and courage over certainty. I'm Cara Nance, and this is Tutum Talk, where we explore leadership in the everyday and beyond. The myth of the natural leader starts early. It's baked into how we talk about potential. Think about it. In school, we're told who the leaders are, the ones who speak up easily, who organize projects, who seem confident in front of others. But leadership is so much more than confidence. It's awareness, empathy, curiosity, qualities that often take time, experience, and self understanding to grow. When we say someone is a natural, what we're really saying is they made leadership look effortless. But effortless doesn't mean easy. And just because someone looks calm on the surface doesn't mean they're not working hard underneath to stay grounded. If you've ever compared yourself to someone who seems more decisive or charismatic, please know they probably have moments of doubt too. They just learned how to navigate them differently. Leadership isn't a trait, it's a practice. And like any practice, it takes and asks for repetition, reflection, and repair. If you're still learning how to lead, good. That means you're paying attention. That means you're growing, not performing. Here's what we don't talk about enough: the invisible labor of leadership. It's not just the meetings, the reports, or the decisions people see. It's the unseen effort underneath. The way you steady yourself before a hard conversation. The mental energy it takes to listen deeply to someone who's upset. The nights you spend replaying an interaction, wondering if you got it right. This emotional labor is real, and often it's invisible. Leaders carry the collective weight of their teams, not just in strategy, but in spirit. And the ones who lead from empathy often feel it even more deeply. But here's what's powerful: that empathy, that authenticity, is your strength, not your burden. When you show your humanity, when you say, that was hard for me too, you remind your team that they're not alone. You model something that no spreadsheet or policy can capture: psychological safety. Because your team will only bring as much of themselves as they see you bring of yourself. And that means your vulnerability becomes an invitation. It says, this is a space where we can be real. And when people feel that, they stop performing and start contributing from the heart. One of my favorite Gallup insights is this: And people don't need a boss who's perfect. They need a leader who's authentic. And authenticity isn't something you're born with, it's something you choose. It's the daily decision to show up as yourself, even when it feels risky, and sometimes especially when it feels risky. Real leaders do a few things consistently. They ask for feedback, even when it stings. They admit when they don't have an answer. They celebrate others often and out loud. They pause before reacting, which then makes it a response. They repair when they miss the mark. And most importantly, they practice being the kind of person they want their team to become. Because leadership is never just about what you do, it's about what you model. When you lead with authenticity, you teach your team that they don't have to hide who they are to belong. When you show vulnerability, you give others permission to be honest about their own limits too. And when you demonstrate curiosity instead of control, you build a culture where people feel safe to grow, not just to perform. That's how leadership becomes transformational, not through power, but through presence. Here's something I want to say gently, because it's something many of us need to hear. You don't have to be the calmest or most confident person in the room to lead well. Your team doesn't need a superhero, they need a steady human. When you try to hold yourself to impossible standards, never showing fatigue, never showing doubt, you unintentionally teach others to hide their own humanity. But when you're open about your learning edges, when you say, I'm figuring this out too, you teach something much more valuable, that growth is allowed here. And when growth is allowed, trust takes root. So maybe the real invitation isn't to be a natural, it's to be yourself on purpose. That's how cultures of honesty, accountability, and belonging are built. And I've seen this transformation happen again and again in corporate teams, in nonprofits, in schools, even in justice impacted communities. When a leader chooses authenticity over image, it creates a ripple. People relax. They start to speak up. They start to care, not just about the work, but about each other. That's leadership that lasts. So, as you move through this week, I want to offer a few questions to sit with, maybe even journal about. Where in your leadership do you feel the pull to perform instead of connect? What part of yourself have you been hiding because you thought it wasn't quote unquote leader like? And what might happen if you brought a little more of your true self into the room? Because when you show up as yourself, you don't just lead better, you invite others to do the same. And that's how teams evolve, not by following someone born to lead, but by growing with someone brave enough to be real. Authenticity isn't a soft skill, it's a stabilizing force. And vulnerability isn't a weakness, it's the language of trust. When you lead from that place, you model what it means to be human in a world that desperately needs more of it. I'm Cara Nance, and this has been Tutum Talk, where we explore leadership in the everyday and beyond. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with a fellow leader, someone who's learning, just like you, that authenticity isn't the opposite of strength. It is strength. And if you'd like to keep exploring this kind of leadership, you can connect with me on LinkedIn or at tutumleadershipcoaching.com. Until next time, remember, you're not alone. You're just becoming. I know you have a lot of options on how you carve out your day and spend your time, and I'm honored that you decide to spend some time here today at Tutum Talk. Remember that leadership, it isn't something that we master once. It's something we grow into, moment by moment. My hope is that today offered you a little more clarity, a little more courage, and a reminder that you're not leading alone. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who might need it too. And remember, confidence doesn't come from having all the answers. It grows from connection, curiosity, and the courage to keep showing up. I'm Cara Nance, and this has been Tutum Talk, exploring leadership in the everyday and beyond.